That's all fun. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have got the lovely Muriel Gibbons from the Wirral, Tim Peppiatt, and I think we've all got beautiful weather in the United Kingdom at the moment, if I've got it right, so it makes a refreshing change. And those of you who are joining us as we speak, if you could very kindly introduce yourselves in the chat and just confirm that audio and video is okay. On your side, Muriel, the streams are coming through good, are they, from Facebook and YouTube? Good.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Lovely. And we've got Renata with us. Hello, Todd. Nice to see you here today as well. So we might as well get started. Just spare me a split second. Right, there we go. So today's topic is about if you're considering a merger or acquisition or raising capital, then this topic today is very much for you. We've got some really great points of discussion with Tim. And Tim, you've been in the sector for a long time, haven't you? Obviously, we're going to come back to you in just a second. But it's probably 10 or 15 years experience or more, is it, overall?
A little bit more than that, actually. We were talking before, Muriel and I, probably more like 25 years.
Wow, joking. Gosh, you get less for life, don't you?
I know, no time off for good behaviour.
Yeah, well, very, very good, very good. So those of you who are joining us as we speak, do introduce yourselves in the chat. A little bit of a quick introduction of myself, ourselves to start with. We're very much here to work with our members and our clients to help them to build deep, valued connections, building on the relationship of trust. At the end of the day, do interact with each other through the live chat, but also do come on with loads of questions as well. But also share what you're passionate about and why you do it, if that's okay with you. And say, be bold with your questions. It makes a much more interesting live stream if we could all be really proactive. A bit of an introduction from myself and from Muriel. I personally founded Business Growth Bureau about 7 years ago, and that was very much to help people to generate a really strong lead flow of new opportunities of business. What I really feel passionate about is actually building circular relationships on solid foundations. There's a lot of talk about a so-called win-win, and if you've got a larger company versus a smaller one, usually the win is seen as being by the larger one. The smaller one invariably can feel a little bit underwhelmed by perhaps what comes in on the other side, because perhaps the terms are so strict in dealing with that larger entity. So what we say is actually it's really important to build a circular relationship. So think how you can look after your prospects, your clients, your investors, your associates, your partners, and your directors, and also your teams as well. And we also suggest that you engage very closely with your suppliers, because ultimately their suppliers can be some of your best advocates, and indeed they can also introduce very nice pieces of business. So if you actually make sure you look after all those relationships, it bodes very well. Muriel, a very quick intro from yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, hello everyone. I really enjoy working with people, developing relationships. I love to do all the training that I do and support and help mainly the clients to have a very easy journey and help them to understand things that possibly they're not sure about.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much, Muriel. And Tim, we'll come back to you in just a second. Just a very quick introduction in terms of what we specialize in. Those who don't know us particularly well, we are here to help people to optimize their systems for business growth. That's through what we class as your strategic guidance systems. Also help companies, organizations put together a value brand proposition. And then really the four essential elements that we particularly get involved with are really around brand amplification, helping you to get your message out there on scale, not just on one or two platforms, but across lots of mediums as well. And it's a very good strategy put in place for that. And also what we class as a social selling blueprint, which is lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization. And if you get that right, you can create a continual lead flow of new opportunities coming through. And it's also about building and strengthen your client proposition overall, so you can surprise and delight, and they also become active customers as well as being referrers. And this is all under the mantra of helping you to bring your sales forward, amplify your brand, and get your time back. Now that's enough about ourselves. What we need to do is, would love to do is now to properly introduce Tim. Had the great privilege of getting to know Tim through LinkedIn. Some of our best partnerships relations been formed through that. And Tim, I was very fascinated by this picture, which I'm going to ask you about in just a second. But also, could you tell us a little bit about the real Tim? A little bit about your background, what person you're very passionate about, your home life and generally, but particularly in business, and really how you got to where you are today. If you give us like a 2 or 3 minute introduction, that'd be brilliant.
For sure. So, apologies to everyone on the call, because I'm obviously better dressed than I am today. I think sartorial elegance has gone out the window with Zoom calls. The P is Peppiatt and Williams. The other half of that picture is Stefan Williams, who's also part of the company. I mean, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about rugby. I'm passionate about my family. I think that I heard a fantastic expression for ex-players. The older I get, the better I was. So I've turned to coaching. I'm now a qualified coach and referee. I actually do referee my son sometimes, which he's not so happy about. In business terms, I've spent the large core of my working life in marketing services, firstly to advertising agencies. And then in 95, I set up a company called Peppiatt, where I was sitting in a stock cupboard of a printers with an Apple Mac I couldn't use, 2 IKEA desks, 2 IKEA chairs, a telephone, a calculator and a pen and a good idea. And at that time, I was passionate about production, things that we're doing today. It's great having a good idea, good having a great idea even. It's great having a great media plan. But if it's executed badly, what's the point? And there was a lot of mystique about it in the early days. And so I jumped off the moving train in 95. I'd been working for a company I partly owned, what they call a graphic reproduction company, Repro House, for want of a better term. And I set up a small consultancy to advise companies on producing things better, to buy things more effectively, to stop the profligacy from ad agencies and the way that they, frankly, took major brands, the cleaners. And that went till 1998. A couple of those companies, Sony and Black & Decker, said, "We love what you've got to say. We'd like to implement it. Can you help?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't really want any staff anymore. I'm very happy with what I'm doing." And it was quite plain that they would find somebody else. So I went to a chap called Martin Sorrell. He wasn't a sir then, and said, "Look, this is the way that production is going to go. You should get on board with it. You've outsourced media." He politely declined. It's a dinner party joke. That was the one that got away from him. I'm sure he doesn't regret a minute of it. And he started Hogarth and brought, funny enough, a couple of my friends in. And that lasted to 2018, a series of acquisitions, expansion into different countries, 200 staff, 30-odd million of turnover. And it got to the point where it nearly killed me. And so I broke it up in 2018 and returned to, thankfully, not a stock cupboard of a printers, but a decent office at home and a thing I never had when I started, broadband.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a really interesting part on, it was from years ago, actually, but those of you who remember James Kahn from Dragon's Den, and he's moved on to set up a company called Startup Loans UK a few years ago as well, which probably a number of you may actually know. But he actually started out in literally almost a cupboard in an office in, was it Regent Street or Oxford Street, I think, a few years ago. And that's one of his stories. So Go on,
I'm not
Tim.
embellishing it. It had no windows. They had to paint it white because it was so dowdy and take all the racks out, print it. And we were kind of locked in there. It was bookkeeper one end and me the other.
Oh, love it. And yet you've transgressed and moved on quite a bit as well, which I'm very keen to talk about. Let's just bring up this next slide, if that's all right.
Sure.
In terms of your topic today that you're going to cover is this very interesting subject about mergers and acquisitions, and also raising capital, and a whole series of points here about what your reasons for buying. Do you have a clear business plan that you can clearly articulate? What are the potential pitfalls you should consider? What are the right skills required for a successful outcome? What impact should you expect from the transaction? How you can measure success? Some really big topics there as a point of discussion. So I think without further ado, perhaps we should drill down on those. But just returning back to the image, coming back to just you and I for a moment, so we focus a little bit more on this particular part. In terms of, you were explaining about the hand, weren't you, about this? And the other hand movement. And what is that supposed to symbolise? I know what it symbolises, but I'm interested to get that message across.
It was supposed to symbolise, not to be too over the top about it, but it's supposed to symbolise fun again, fun in business. And my name, Peppiatt, and his name, Williams.
Okay.
And both, the photographer was great. I'd used him before, and Stefan is a fantastic character. As funnily enough, just set up another hugely successful Marcom's communication business, especially in the financial sector. So, yeah, I mean, I've known him an awful long while. I was his first client. He said I was the second one when he left Reuters. And we've just remained friends. He's been an amazing friend and advisor.
Okay, it's interesting enough. I got it completely wrong because I took that to mean out of the box thinking. Because the square I saw as being in the box, and the other part as being out of the box thinking. But you can put it whatever meaning you like behind it. But either way, it's got a meaning, hasn't it? So, which is great. And in terms of sort of relating to the first point about sort of mergers and acquisitions. What are some of the main reasons that people will look at in terms of buying? What are your thoughts around that particular point?
A number of things. A strategic advantage to add a capability they don't have. Scale. So there are a lot of There are a lot of major brands who say they'd like to work with SMEs, but really they don't. They'd rather have a global solution for everything. To get people, I remember Saatchi's bought Hedger Mitchell Stark back in the day for the creative director, and they were quite blunt about it. If you can't buy the person, buy the company and get the person. So, how do we put stuff over to clients? You need a team of people, operational people, salespeople. And I think you want to increase value, you want to increase volume, but people are driving that. And I think that's often forgotten when you integrate these businesses. So they're look, hubris. I'm sure, in fact, we're seeing it now. Sir Martin Sorrell. We need one P&L, worldwide. Well, that's weird because for the best part of 20 odd years, you were making all your agencies compete one another on EBITDA. So, you're a born again consolidator, and I think that's important. Sometimes it's cutting down the opportunities for your customers to go elsewhere. For example, we had Christie's an account, and we added studio, we added retouching, we added photography, and tupied across 27 staff. There was nowhere that they could go unless they wanted to lift those and tupie them across to somebody else. So I think strategic advantage also.
Yeah, so in a sense, that sort of, on one hand, I don't like the phrase, but took out the competition, but actually a nicer way of doing it is saying integrated the competition, so you actually end up with a much better consolidated solution. Is that the more positive way of looking at it overall, would you say? Yeah,
I was more blunt about it. Make it more difficult to fire you or run a pitch process. I mean, you know, it was odd because I had a creative side to the business. I also had a procurement side to the business. So in '98, you know, we were saving Black & Decker something like 70%. Well, that's great. We weren't developed enough to do it the way an Accenture would do it, or procurement, so get a share of the savings. So when the old procurement chap moved on, and incidentally, I still interact with him. He's at the NHS, quite high up. The 30 that you left with becomes the 100, and what have you done for me lately? So yeah. they start nibbling at your margins. So you need more things. You need more things to wrap around it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And obviously, with any sort of attempt with buying, there's always a selling process as part of it as well. And we'll probably come on to some of the benefits and pitfalls on that in just a moment. But is it fairly easy to get finance for those type of propositions? And where do you typically get it from? Is it from venture capital organisations, or is it usually from private funders? And is that affected by the size of the merger and acquisition?
Oh God, where to start? I think that's dramatically changed. So private equity, not so much, but they are a major player now as it has consolidated out. You know, TAG. Williams Lee Tag are owned by a venture capital company. When I was doing it, it was banks. So buy and build strategies were fundable. They're not really open for business now. They say they do, and I find, you know, if I was still active as an acquirer, you know, I think it would make me cross the way that they're. Well, it still makes me cross actually, but the way that they're saying that we will support this. I mean, the last business plan I put out to a bank, it took a long while. In fact, I'm looking at it. It took so much of my life. It's on my book cabinet. But we had 5 banks offer us the money. It was 3.2 million from memory. Should be in grain of mine. And that was quite an easy process because we were established. We'd established ourselves. So the first sort of 4 or 5 years, we went from 0 to about 7 million in turnover. So it was a little bit easier. We proved a point. We had some organic growth to point to. You know, and I'm an old-fashioned businessman. I like to see cash flow. I like to see profit. I understand tech investing. You do 30 and you get 1, maybe, or 100 and you get 1. But if I'd have said to Barclays, I want to take you through my cash burn, they'd have had me dragged from the building. You know, it was very solid cash flows. It was mainly banks. Latterly, or after that, it's crowdfunding. But if you look at Cedars now, they almost want you to put pound for pound. So you raise a pound, they raise a pound through their network. So, and there will be a lot more failures there. So I'm not sure that's a route. So now it's, you know, I'm, as you know, starting a new business. I'm actually working for a fund, which sounds very grandiose, but I'm doing the same thing as I was doing 5 or 6 years ago, but on a much smaller scale. You know, that is high net worths, family offices, and it is a full-time job. And I know we're going to come on to it, but it's a hell of a distraction for a business, especially businesses that rely on key individuals. So I was doing sales. Some might argue against that, but I was, and I brought some decent business in. And you can ignore those customers as you do it. So you are spending so much time with advisors, with bankers, with accountants. Latterly, I just outsourced all of the modelling. We didn't do it ourselves. So, yeah, I think it's changed. In answer to your question, I think it's changed. It was banks. The Business Growth Fund was active, although out of the 4 billion that they were guaranteed, they in the first 2 or 3 years they'd deployed about 130 million.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So 2 billion. It's
wow.
They were doing it in typical terms, not how the government envisaged it. So that doesn't sound very inspiring. It's got no less difficult, but the players have changed. You're right.
Yeah, and it's one of interest. How does a company make themselves more attractive for an acquisition target as far as in future? What strategy? What do they put in place to make themselves more attractive for acquisition?
Excuse me, Rupert. You just cut out there. So
how can companies make them, if they want to actually find investment or to be acquired? How do they make themselves more attractive for an acquisition?
I mean, nothing's changed. Good management. Number one, most of these companies will back good management. So I've got friends and Lloyd's Development Capital, and I went to them with business plans, and they give you a very strong critique. The project I'm on at the moment. I've got the managing director of Accenture, both advising and investing. That's really, really important. And running it properly. The amount of businesses that I still help advise, like yourself, don't get the basics right. Is your P&L up to date? Have you got monthly management accounts? This might sound crazy, but not all of them do. Somebody gave me a balance sheet that didn't balance. Get the basics. Get the basics right, and then spend a lot of time on research and writing a business plan. And I don't just mean, a simple thing. Really go to town on it. I literally I was up for nearly 48 hours when I did the last one for Peppiatt, and I went into town to our offices and kind of camped out there just to do the structure. And then was bouncing it back off my chairman. And that was a long and iterative process. So good people, I think we're going to come on to it, get the best advisors that you can afford. If you can't afford it, get them. Find a way to get them anyway. And know the target, know why you want to do it, be really clear, and be prepared to be grilled. These guys get hundreds of business plans come across their desk in a month.
You're particularly talking about presumably larger organisations there. How about if you've got a small to medium-sized business where they perhaps are more suitable for a crowdfunding type investment, and do people need to go into the same level of depth with their business plan, or should it be presented quite differently because you are trying to make the investment appeal to the crowd rather than institutional type investment?
That's fine. I mean, there are companies. The ex chief operating officer set up a company called Overfund. He was employee number 2 at Cedars. Thomas Davis, very nice man. He actually put together something you can buy as a package to do it. I mean, it's fairly well-trodden path. You look at them, there's a reason they look the same, video, description of the market. It's because They need to get them on a platform very quickly. But don't be under any illusion. Once you start getting investors ask questions, they're going to want to know all those things. And there's no umming and ahhing.
No.
You and I.
They see straight through that. Yeah,
it makes Dragon's Den look like a walk in the park, frankly.
Yeah, and also it's not just that; it's also the warranties that the directors and so on tend to be expected to give as well, isn't it? And I remember it was a long time ago, actually, but about 15 years ago, I think we through Nothing to a Business Growth Bureau, we were trying to raise investment at the time, and I remember seeing this document that came through, and I think it was asking me to give out 40 different warranties, and I looked at it and I thought, hang on, 10 of these warranties no reasonable business person could actually agree to. So actually in the end I actually withdrew from it because I felt uncomfortable. I thought if they were trying to get us to that level of detail and almost guarantee things that we couldn't guarantee, it's totally out of our control, then it wasn't the right part of the partnership. So that one fell by the wayside. And it was difficult turning away money because actually it was quite a reasonable amount of money at the time. But it was, no regrets about it. It would have actually boxed us in a corner and would have caused us problems later on. So, and then, of course, with all the personal liabilities that come on the back of that as well. So it's a big lesson to be learned both ways.
Sorry, Rupert, there's a little bit of delay. I do apologise. Yeah. There was a golden rule for me, no personal guarantees, ever.
Right.
They've won to Close Brothers in the end. I spoke to a person this morning funding £500,000. He's got $1.5 million of assets pledged against it. The chap's home, his watch and clock collection, which is worth £1 million. I mean, nobody expects to fail, but the plain fact is it does.
Yeah.
And you don't want your wife or your husband to suffer for it. If it's a strong enough plan, someone will back it.
Yeah.
It's every day and every month for 6 working on it, but you'll get it. Yeah. Providing it's a sound and solid business.
Yeah. Would you say that particularly applies more to established business? For example, if it's a much younger business which hasn't got much of a track record, would you say the same is true, or is it more typical with much smaller micro businesses, for example, where it's almost the norm you'd have to give personal guarantees and that type of thing? It's point of interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think crowdfunding has helped do that. I think even people who invest in crowdfunding, and Andy Murray, the tennis player, was a big investor through Cedars. I think that's going to get tighter. Again, I've always worked on the theory, let's prove a point. So if it's a good idea, you go all in, prove it, and then borrow money. So I've always built a track record with something before I've borrowed. Not strictly, actually, that's not strictly true. When I first started Peppiatt, I bought the office furniture on my credit card, but that's a long while back, and I don't recommend everybody else does it. I think people like track record. They're going to ask you, they're asking me with my new business, how much are you going to put in? First thing, they call it hurt money. It's called hurt money for a reason. It will hurt you if it goes wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. In fact, this leads on really nicely to the next point. But before I do that, those of you who joined us on the live stream today, as I say, do come in with your questions. And also, can any of you relate to what Tim is actually sharing today? And what questions do you have as well? Do put it in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll try and drop those questions in as they come in. And the sort of next point, really, or question, which you sort of touched on a little bit, is what sort of pitfalls should people consider with a merger or acquisition? And what are we talked about, obviously, avoiding giving personal guarantees. But I suppose if you were looking at it from the buyer's point of view, what should they avoid? And equally from the seller's point of view, what tips would you give around that?
Crikey. B, as a buyer, I probably wasn't ruthless enough. I took some advice from a lady called Aviva Gushoni-Roth. She was head of communications for Hanson. She was my client from Savills. And I had 2 questions for her, and she answered the first one without saying anything. Is, anything over £500, Tim, yes, it has to be signed off head office, worldwide, any capital expenditure. But I was talking to her about how they look at a deal. How have they been so successful? She said they were absolutely ruthless about their model. They've set out what they wanted to do. They've put all the numbers into it, and if anything popped out the side of the model, in fact, she used a great example, and I will be dating myself here. She said, "Remember that graph paper you got at school? We put that over it. If anything pops out, we don't do the deal."
Right.
I don't care who you are. And I've suffered from it as well. You get deal fever, especially if you're trying to add something that you haven't got, you think will make you more attractive to someone else. It's almost impossible in a due diligence process to tease everything out. You can't tease out behaviours under pressure. And if you're a small business, we were a small business. We had great accountants, we had great lawyers. In fact, I still use the lawyers. But getting under the skin of the business, people behave differently under a sale process than they do in everyday work. And they don't run quite as fast afterwards. So, you've got to be so sure it's right. You're going to be on the hook. It's all very well, so I've got all this money coming into the bank, but then you'll have a thing called banking covenants. Don't enter into it if you're pushing it. Did we? Yes. There were things that we desperately needed. What put us under pressure? Performance and cash. Never run out of cash or even look like it. That's when the trouble starts. I hasten to add that the 2 digital businesses that I bought are doing spectacularly well now. One in Manchester and one in Bulgaria. But you don't get an insight. Spend a lot of time looking at the people, looking at, talking to customers. You can't do enough of that. And even then, you'll get bad behaviour. And I won't repeat bad behaviour on here, but you'll get it from the most unlikely quarters.
Right, really? Yeah. What's people who seem on the face of it very nice and very straightforward and this type of thing, they become almost different the moment that something, an investment, a merger or acquisition happen.
Yeah, people behave very funnily around money when they haven't had it and they have got it all of a sudden. Right. But, culture.
I was just going to ask you about culture. So you read my mind. So, I was going to ask about that. And that's also particularly important with a merger acquisition scenario, isn't it? Because if the cultures don't fit, the bottom line is you shouldn't do the deal, should you? So
no, or you've got to make allowances for that culture. I mean, we tried wherever possible not to change a culture. So, for example, we bought a company in Manchester, digital business, and we left it as a standalone. I thought the business was fantastic. The people were fantastic. We didn't want to put our brand over it. Would we have changed the name later on? Maybe. There'd have had to be a really compelling reason. The staff worked for that company. They worked for that area. What they didn't want is some chap coming out from London once a month and telling them how to run things. They knew how to run it. They were a really successful business, and they've carried on being successful. So culture is important. Don't try and enforce your culture. Unless you are a huge multinational, and even they don't do it. I'm not saying it's not. You're not being. It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. This is the way that we sell. Okay, don't do it like that. Do it this way. This is the process we go through. Take us through it and why. And actually, what we found was, if we'd have if we'd have used some of our, don't get me wrong, some of our financial controls were far superior, cash flow management. But actually running the business, of course they knew, but that's why we wanted them.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And what would you say the right? What would you say the right skill sets are for achieving a successful outcome?
From the buy side?
Well, actually, both. Can we look at for both sides?
Sure. Buy side, infinite patience before the deal and after. Now, look, there are many people out there who know me well. I've never been dubbed the Mother Teresa of marketing services. You need to be incredibly patient. Things that you might not put up with when you're just a manager of a business. That sounds negative, but it's not. You're absorbing lots of different, highly skilled, highly capable people into a group. That's a huge one. Patience. People would say that I probably wasn't as good as it as we should have been. Praise for. You got praise in the Peppiatt group. You did something great, but we let people make mistakes. Make one once, don't make one twice. And I mean mistakes that cost us a lot of money. Be there to supporting staff when they're trying something new, especially when you've got a new service coming on board, is absolutely crucial. Nobody gets it quite right. As you know, Rupert, I worked at GSK for 6-month consultancy last year, and there are things that SMEs do better than companies like that. Training, staff welfare, they're world class at. If you could afford those modules that they put everyone through, there's no reason why small businesses can't scale very, very quickly. Yeah. But unfortunately, you kind of add it as you go. So yeah, patience and support when things go wrong.
Right. That sounds really interesting. That
and they do.
Yeah. So, and what would you say would expect from a transaction as well?
Crikey! I mean, what? You try out the obvious answers, value enhancing, more opportunity for staff, and we did create that. We got good people in, then moved them to other areas, and had it gone on another 10 years, we had somebody go from the UK to work in Hong Kong. We had an office in Jakarta. We put people out there. Eventually we'd have moved them around. So I think getting skill sets right around the business, that was fantastic for me.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I think what we'll do is I'd like to feed in a couple of questions. I know Renato, in just a moment, if you could just type in the chat what your experience. You mentioned about a B&D person in British Telecom. Just share a little bit of your thoughts around that. Alex, I'll thank you. I'm glad you joined us today, Alex, as well. So we'll come to yours in just a moment, actually. So it'll be a really interesting one to come to. And I've also got a great question I'd like to ask you in just a couple of minutes. What we're going to do is do a little bit of a 3 or 4 minute introduction to what's coming up in the coming weeks. And if it's okay with you, Tim, we'll come back to you again in just a moment. So bear me a second. And Muriel, if you could just join us as well now, that'd be lovely. Thank you. Right, so this is what we've been talking about today, and Tim, obviously very grateful for the value you've been sharing as part of today's discussion. Just a bit of a summary of what's coming for the next few weeks, and also in terms of how we like to work with our clients. Fundamentally, we are here to help you. We do recognise that running a business can be a very lonely journey, whether you're a company of 1 or a company of 1,000. And fundamentally, it's really important to build on solid foundations. If you enjoy these sessions, do share via Facebook or YouTube, and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the sessions. And in terms of being able to subscribe to future weeks, you can go via our website. You can either choose continue and just make a single booking, or if you choose the recurring option, then you can book multiple periods in one go, which saves you having to re-register each time. Now, there are a few changes coming up. So we're moving more to a monthly format for the live streams. So we've got our next live stream on the 1st of July, and then after that, it's the 29th of July, and it's going to be monthly after that. And what we are replacing those with is what we class as a business growth, Wealth Growth Club, and also a Business Growth Club. So just to explain that a little bit more, on the Wealth Growth Club side, we're going to be looking more at a personal level. Is, you know, what is your why, motivation, your personal plans, your business plans, how that ties with what you want personally, how you can create financial wealth, and also your happiness, your future, because it's so important that both those parts are well aligned with your business. And on the business side, I've got a separate Business Growth Club, and that's going to be about your business, your lifestyle, your product portfolio, your marketing mix, creating financial wealth, and your business legacy, which of course does tie in with the mergers and acquisitions part as well, because invariably as a business gets more mature, then you're also looking a lot at the business legacy. And as part of these sessions, what you are very welcome to do, because those two clubs are free sessions for the first time you join us. We've run the first one of these this week as a pilot, and we had some very valuable feedback from those. So the next two sessions are around business growth, and we're also running the Wealth Growth Club sessions as well. And again, for those of you who'd like to join us on those, it's very straightforward. If you just interested in taking part, just text Muriel or call Muriel or drop her an email. Her mobile number is 07852 329 762, and she will share a link with you so you can book on the next available sessions that may interest you. And also, just we'll run through this as well now. Tim obviously has very kindly shared his time today. If you want to find more about Tim and his organisation, the web address is tpandsw.com, and Tim's mobile number is 07711 086 005, and you can reach him at Tim at get my tongue back in my mouth again, tpandsw.com. So do reach out. In fact, Tim, just coming back to you now as well. So let's just return to how we were a second ago. And we'll also then deal with Alex's question, and also any feedback that Renata has given us as well. I know you've got some other business interests as well. I don't know how much of it's in public domain you can talk about. But how much do you feel comfortable to share? Because it's ever so exciting, and the images that I've seen as well are really impressive.
Thank you. Well, I actually can now. It's the first regulated business that I've been involved with. We have set up a property fund to produce a residential version of WeWork. So what does that mean? We will offer spaces to professional people for a single fee, whereby you will get your rent, all of your utilities, your broadband. Hopefully, as it progresses, we will put gyms, swimming pools, and business centres. I'm also the trustee of a mental health charity, so that whole work-life balance that you mentioned, you know, the younger people on the call, God, I've never thought I'd hear myself say that. You know, I don't need to worry about that. I can work 14, 15 hours a day. You know, believe me, it catches up with you. And I think, you know, you look at what people are doing now. Night Frank, going to go into the office for 3 days, going to work from home 2. So I think that's quite important. So I'm out fundraising again. So I'm great. I think my title is in investment committee member and portfolio manager for Sturgeon Ventures.
Nice.
The concept was mine, and so I am out fundraising again, which is something I said I'd never do again. But I'm passionate about the project. It's something, you talk about legacy, something that I can leave the green shoots of to my kids. And I love design and property and all those sort of things. And I was doing it when I was at Peppiatt, so it's not an alien concept to me. Sorry,
really,
go on. Rupert.
Slight time delay, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on looking, you very kindly shared with me some pictures a few weeks ago, and I must admit the units themselves I like almost to die for, aren't they? They're really, really well equipped, and to be frank, I think it's a real market for it, especially with Monday living. So I think you could well be onto something as far as that's concerned. But sorry, was it you, Tim, or Muriel, who wanted to say something there? So I interrupted part of the way through.
No, before the break, we were talking about skill sets, and I think that's a massive thing. You have to look inwardly and say, do we have the skills to take this forward? And I'll be honest, I thought I did, but I had to learn incredibly fast, pay a lot of money. If you haven't got them, be honest and try and bring them in. And I mean, advisors, people who model things, banks like things in certain ways. So, we all think we can do everything. There are very few businessmen that can run the whole show on their own. I think Lou Grade was the last. It's get there quicker, and that way, get there quicker. Get a successful business and rent one of the properties that we build when we get the funds.
A bit of a plug there, but why not? A bit of shameless. Why not?
I didn't say the name of the company though, because
yeah, that's true. But if you want to any more, by all means, reach out to Tim or contact me, and I'll pass on the details to Tim as well. So I've got one final question I'd like to ask, but I think it's time just to look at this. Muriel, are you ready to be able to pick a couple of these out? If that's all right. So let's. Renato's picked up a point. Muriel, could you just read this point out that Renato's saying here as well?
Which one? That one there. Good example was he gave case of China company creating workmate cheaper than them illegally. Colleagues wanted to sue and close down. Oh, that relates to the previous one where I think I recall the same.
Sorry, I got that one. I do apologise. It's a much earlier one. It's this one here, isn't it?
Sorry. Renato, connecting customers in remote parts with satellite whilst preparing next career in alternative medicine and passionate to make things happen by networking. I don't think that's the one, Rupert.
Right.
One before about deal fee.
No, it's not. Where is it?
I think it's the one where he says, I think I recall the same ex-BD person in British Telecom.
Okay. Yeah. So do we understand that? I'm not sure.
A good example was that he gave a case of China company creating workmate cheaper than them illegally. Colleagues wanted to sue and close down. Ooh. Okay.
Right.
Then he's followed it on with his view. If they almost got product right and done so cheaply, we buy them, get product right and increase our margins.
Any thoughts on that one, Tim?
I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what they're driving at there.
No. Okay. I think it was more about the outcome from that, wasn't it? I mean, the one. Sorry, I was still kind of running through the point that Muriel put up about deal fever and people forgetting the numbers. If they almost got product right and done so cheaply, we buy them, get product right and increase our margin. Without knowing the skill sets, that's quite risky, and who's going to back that? But you're going to buy them. Are you buying? You're buying failure, really. They haven't got it quite right. If I'm reading this correctly. And then you're going to get the product right. So you're going to have to replace the staff.
I'm not saying it would be a no if they've got a patent or something that you need, but you're buying people that can't get the product right. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah, I think what Renata's saying is, yes, it was the BD that did all those things years ago. So
Right.
obviously,
I'm referring to much earlier points.
yeah, it was a small cost to get it right with the other company. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
again, without knowing the technicalities, if they are so absolutely convinced that they know what the problem is, then yes. I nowadays I would probably wait. I know it sounds terrible, until that company failed. In my business, Paragon buy up distressed assets and made a huge success of them because they jettison all of the debt and everything else. And my business now will rely on buying things under market value or distressed and actually turning them into good assets. So that would be a wary one for me.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Alex, Muriel, Muriel, can you read Alex?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So deal fever is a great way of describing it. There's almost a blindness that comes over acquisition teams where they become so vested in the adrenaline and making an acquisition that they lose sight of the reality of the numbers. As always, due diligence devil is in the detail.
I couldn't agree more with Alexander. I mean, I was honest about it. Did I get deal fever for one deal? Yes, I did. And that probably coloured my judgment. We got a lot better at it. Again, bringing good people in, good advisors. So the last account, I always forget their name. It wasn't Ernst & Young. But one of the things banks will always ask you, and you end up recasting the numbers, is what happens if you lose that account? What happens if that revenue doesn't come in? What happens if your costs rise? So in the end, and I called in the 5 banks, I said, I don't want to hear from you guys. We need you to recast the numbers. I put sliders in it, debtor days slider, automatically take out accounts. It was so comprehensive and so expensive. It was good for us because we started asking ourselves those questions. And as I say, the company in Manchester, the company in Bulgaria are going gangbusters, sound businesses. But, you learn. And you're right, there is deal fever. M&A teams, there aren't, not many SMEs have got an M&A team. And even your advisors get paid when you do deals. I bought a company from one advisor that we really struggled with because he actually projected it to be slightly better than it was. And we weren't a private equity house. We were a company trying to be a bigger and more attractive company to others. So yeah, you can get carried away with yourself, but your advisors can get carried away equally when they see.
Yeah, and it's it can be buying to the froth if you're not careful too, can't you? So, and the sort of final question really is how do you measure success, both from a selling point of view and also from a buying point of view?
How do you mean? I mean, undeniably, financially, has it improved the value of the business? Has it increased the profitability? And that can be for a number of reasons. You may want to continue investing. We sadly couldn't invest more in Manchester. I'd like to make that a lot bigger. I think a big one for me in hindsight is staff satisfaction. Are they happy? Have we retained clients or have they defected? Well, we actually put on clients through acquisition because we had more things to offer. Will it give us will it give us a better business opportunity? Will our scale allow us to go in? And yes, you know, we picked up bigger clients. We increased our business from existing clients. You know, Christie's was a business for us that had 3 or 4 people. We ended up having 27 people on site in London, New York, and Hong Kong. And also, you know, improved rates from supply chain. You made a good point, Rupert, in that they can be great advocates for you. I mean, sadly, on the buying side, we had strained relationships because our customers were pushing us. But I got probably one of our biggest clients, Just Eat, before they were as big as they are now, from the ex-employee who'd gone to a competitor, who phoned me from the car park of Just Eat, said, "These guys need you, they don't need us." Now, statute of limitations off. I know the MD of the other company. He's a friend of mine, and he's long since retired. And my friends moved on, and we did a stonking job. So obviously he was not we lost the Orange account. He got Tupied across. Great relationships there. So yeah, I think increase the network. You know, is marketing services littered with people? You know, is everyone I've met happy to deal with me? I guess not. But I'm still drawing on relationships that I've had for 30 years. It's very mercenary. I still play golf with the creative services director of Bartle Bogle Hegarty, who are now a part of the Publicis Group. I went in that company when they were 12 people. I think there are 1,000 people now, and I still see him. I hopefully see him Saturday morning at Leeds Castle.
Well, yeah, and Leeds Castle's lovely as well, by the way. So especially if you've got good weather, then it's thoroughly enjoyable.
That seemed obvious, Rupert, but they are, you know, they are the basics. You know, you've got, especially if you've got shareholders. You know, how much more profit will we make?
Yes.
How many more clients will we get?
So overall, mergers and acquisitions generally, you feel work out favourably for both sides, do you, or is it typically, do people feel at the end of it, it is very much a win-lose in many cases?
In my personal experience, the first one we did, I didn't do the integration as well as old habits die hard. I took responsibility for everything then, and I do now. The integration could have been better as we went on, and we understood more. Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm the eternal optimist, but yeah, I think they do work. But by God, make sure you get the integration right. And there'll be people on the call and say the 100-day rule. If you don't get the synergies in 100 days, you're not going to get them. That is true.
Right.
Absolutely true.
That's a really good tip, actually, because and then it gets to a stage where then you almost have to take a different strategy or policy altogether then, because there's just not an appropriate match.
Well, they at GSK, when they put Pfizer Healthcare with GSK Consumer Healthcare in procurement, they had a guy who was working on deal synergies, dedicated to deal synergy procurement. I worked on it, and they had a plan, and they knew exactly what, you know, this is our target for all of these things, deduplication. And they did it well.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. Well, I think that's a very nice one to finish up on. So I think, Tim, we'd all like to join in and say thank you very much for your very kind contribution today. And do reach out to Tim about his latest innovation. Sounds really good. So the We Work for Home Living. So can't beat it. Anyway,
brilliant idea.
Very much everyone for joining in. As I say, next one of these live streams is on the 1st of July, and after that's 29th of July. And we do actually have the Wealth Growth Club next week, and also the Business Growth Club. So if you want to reach out to Muriel, just drop Muriel an email, or myself for that matter, or send us a text, and we will make sure you get an invite emailed through to you. So Muriel's email address, by the way, is Muriel@businessgrowthbureau.com, and your mobile, Muriel, just remind me again of that.
I have put it in the chat, and I've just put my email in the chat. So the mobile is 07852 329 762, and my email is Muriel@businessgrowthbureau.com.
Lovely. And Tim, do you want to just read out your mobile number again, just to make sure no one's missed it?
07711
Yeah.
086 005. 07711 086 005.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your kind contribution, Tim. And we'll catch up next time round. So see you all hopefully in the next few weeks. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.